The massive ships appeared in Earth's sky without warning. They came from beyond the moon, hundreds of them, each one larger than any building humans had ever made. The ships were dark metal with lights that burned like angry stars. They formed a circle around the planet, waiting. Commander Keel looked down at Earth from the window of his flagship. He had 4 eyes, and all of them showed the same thing. A small world. A weak world. A world that would be easy to take. Keel had conquered many planets in his life. This one looked the easiest yet. The Dominion Empire had ruled the stars for 300 years. No planet had ever resisted. No civilization had ever fought back in a way that mattered. The Dominion brought order to the chaos of space. They brought control to the wild worlds. And they always won. Keel gave the order without any doubt in his mind. A message went out to every radio frequency on Earth. The message was in the human language because the Dominion's computers had already learned it. The message was simple and clear. This is Commander Keel of the Dominion Fleet. Your planet is now under our control. You have 1 hour to surrender. If you do not surrender, we will destroy your cities. If you resist in any way, we will destroy your world. You cannot win. You cannot fight us. Your choice is to live as our subjects or die as our enemies. Decide now. The message repeated over and over. Radio stations heard it. Television stations heard it. Military bases heard it. Every government on Earth heard it at the same time. For a moment, the world went silent. Then everything changed. In a large military base buried deep under the Rocky Mountains in Colorado, Captain Marcus Webb was sitting in a command center filled with screens and computers. Marcus was 52 years old. He had dark hair with gray in it. His face was lined from years of stress and hard work. He had spent his entire life preparing for this moment, the moment when something impossible would come. He did not feel ready. No one could feel ready for this. "Sir," said Lieutenant Dana Foster, who worked with the communication systems. "The message is real. The ships are real. They are in orbit. They are above us right now." Marcus nodded slowly. He had already understood this. He could see the same data on his screens that Dana could see. The ships were there. They were really there. "Get me the president," Marcus said. His voice was calm. His hands did not shake. This was his job. This was what he had trained for. The next hours were chaos and order mixed together. Every government leader on Earth received the message at the same time. Every military commander on Earth received the same orders from their leaders. Every news station on Earth reported the same thing. Aliens had come. They wanted surrender, but something strange happened. Instead of panic and running, humans did something different. They started to talk to each other. The President of the United States called the leaders of China and Russia and India and every other major nation. They talked about what they should do. They talked about whether they could fight. They talked about what surrender would mean. Scientists tried to understand the ships. Generals tried to plan for war. Citizens tried to understand what was happening to their world. In streets and homes and offices, people gathered around screens and watched the dark ships hang in the sky like a promise of death. Captain Marcus Webb sat in his command center and listened to all of this. He listened to the president. He listened to the other military leaders. He listened to his own officers as they gave him reports on weapons and defenses and the terrible odds they faced. Then, after 6 hours, the president made a decision. She called all the world leaders together in a video conference. They spoke for 2 hours. Then, the president told Marcus what she wanted to do. "We are going to refuse," the president said. "We are going to tell them no." Marcus understood what this meant. This meant fighting. This meant death. This meant the end of Earth as humans knew it, probably. But he also understood something else. Surrender meant the end of everything, too. Surrender meant humans would become slaves to the Dominion. Surrender meant giving up everything. "Tell them," Marcus said to his communications officer. "Tell them we will not surrender." The message went out from the United Nations. It was read by the Secretary General, a woman named Catherine Wells, who was small and strong and had the face of someone who had made hard choices before. The message was simple. The people of Earth refuse your demands. We will not surrender our world. We will not become your slaves. We will fight to protect our home and our people. You can destroy us, but you cannot break us. When Commander Keel received the message, something happened that he did not understand. For the first time in his life, Keel felt uncertainty. The humans had refused. They had actually refused. This was not part of his plan. This was not what he expected. Keel had conquered 37 planets. 37 times, civilizations had looked at the Dominion fleet and surrendered. 37 times, resistance had been impossible. But the humans said no. Keel thought about this for a long moment. Then he made his decision. If they would not surrender, then he would make them surrender. He would start with their cities. He would show them what pain felt like. "Begin the bombardment," Keel said into his communication system. The order went out to all the ships in the fleet. Energy weapons that could burn entire buildings in one moment began to warm up. Targeting systems looked down at the cities below. The bombardment was about to begin. On Earth, the sensors picked up the power surge from the alien ships. Scientists knew what this meant. The aliens were preparing to attack. The war was about to begin. In the command center, Marcus Webb looked at his screens and saw the moment approaching. He had already prepared for this. He had orders ready for every military unit on Earth. He had plans to scatter the military across the planet so nothing could be destroyed all at once. He had safe places prepared where people could hide. He pressed a button on his console and spoke into the microphone. His voice went to every military base on Earth, to every government center, to every place where humans were ready to fight back. All units, this is command. The bombardment is about to begin. Begin emergency dispersal. Move all personnel to secondary locations. This is not a drill. This is real. We are at war. Around the world, soldiers and pilots and scientists began to move. They had trained for this. They had prepared. Some of them believed they would die today. Some of them thought this was the end of everything. But they moved anyway, because this was their world. And they would not give it up without a fight. In the sky above, the ships began to fire. The first energy weapons descended toward the surface of Earth, and the war had begun. The energy weapons hit the first city just after dawn. The impact was like the end of the world. Buildings that had stood for 100 years were gone in seconds. The light was so bright that people miles away had to cover their eyes. The heat came next, burning everything it touched. Thousands of people died in those first moments. People who had never done anything wrong. People who were just sleeping or eating or living their normal lives when the sky opened up and killed them. But the bombardment did not last long. The military had moved fast. The Dominion ships were expecting to find cities full of people. They were expecting to find government centers and military bases filled with soldiers. What they found instead was silence and empty streets. The humans were gone. Captain Marcus Webb sat in his command center beneath the Rocky Mountains. Around him, officers worked at their stations, watching screens filled with data from across the entire planet. The bombardment was happening, and they could do nothing to stop it. But that was not the plan anyway. The plan was to survive it. Marcus had known since the beginning that humans could not win a fight in space. The alien ships were too powerful. The alien weapons were too strong. Humans could not match them in firepower or technology. But humans could do something that the Dominion did not expect. Humans could run. Humans could hide. Humans could refuse to die. "Status report," Marcus said to Colonel Patricia Brown, his second in command. Patricia was a tall woman with dark skin and sharp eyes. She had a scar on her left cheek from an accident years ago. She was one of the best officers Marcus had ever worked with. 90% of the population in target cities has been evacuated, Patricia said. "We still have people dying in the attacks, but not the numbers the Dominion expected." The dispersal orders worked. Marcus nodded. This was good news. This meant that millions of people were alive who should have been dead. This meant that the Dominion plan was failing. Commander Keel had expected to destroy cities and break the will of humanity. What Keel had not understood was that humans had already accepted that they might lose everything except their lives. The bombardment continued for 3 days. Cities were destroyed. Military bases were obliterated. Factories and power plants and water treatment centers were smashed into rubble. The Dominion fleet worked with total efficiency and total power. They destroyed everything they targeted, but there were no people in most of the places they destroyed. The humans had learned something that the Dominion did not know. Sometimes survival was more important than keeping the buildings standing. Sometimes the best army was the army that refused to die. And humans were very good at refusing to die. In a mountain bunker in Montana, Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell stood in front of communications equipment. Sarah was 28 years old. She had red hair pulled back in a tight bun. Before the war, she had been a communications officer in a small military base. Now she was the voice of Earth's military to its scattered forces across the planet. Sarah received orders from the command center beneath the mountains. She passed those orders to military units all over the world. Every soldier, every pilot, every commander received the same message. Do not fight. Do not engage. Retreat. Survive. Prepare. The pilots in the air bases felt this order like a knife in the chest. They wanted to fly. They wanted to shoot. They wanted to do something to fight back. But the orders were clear. Stay hidden. Stay alive. Fight later. Captain Frank Hayes was a pilot with 20 years of experience. He was 50 years old, with a solid body and a face that was weathered from years in the sun. He had a wife and 2 children in a safe bunker somewhere under Kansas. He had not seen them since the bombardment started. Frank sat in a hidden airbase and watched as his brothers, in arms, did the same thing. They waited. They gritted their teeth and they waited. Every minute that they were alive was a victory. Every soldier who survived was a weapon that could be used later. The bombardment ended on the 4th day. The Dominion fleet had destroyed almost everything on the surface of Earth that was worth destroying. They had leveled the great cities. They had obliterated the military bases. They had smashed the government centers. By any measure, the Dominion had won the first battle. But when the ships sent down landing crews to begin the occupation, they found something unexpected. The survivors were still fighting in the ruins of what had once been New York City. A group of soldiers under the command of Major Robert Hayes emerged from underground tunnels. Robert was Frank's younger brother, tall and quick. He moved his soldiers through the wreckage with the speed of people who knew they were probably going to die. But they had orders. They were to strike at the landing forces. They were to show the Dominion that even if they had destroyed the cities, they had not destroyed the humans. The first battle between human soldiers and Dominion troops happened in the ruins of the city. The Dominion soldiers were stronger and faster and better armed. They should have crushed the human resistance in minutes. But the humans had something the Dominion did not. They had nothing left to lose. A soldier named David Lopez threw himself in front of a Dominion weapon to save his fellow soldiers. He died doing it. A soldier named Catherine Price fought with a knife against a creature 3 times her size and managed to wound it before she fell. These humans were not winning, but they were not running either. The Dominion troops called for support. They called for airstrikes. The Dominion fleet responded with weapons and fire from orbit. Major Robert Hayes ordered a retreat when he saw that they could not hold the position. His soldiers pulled back into the tunnels, carrying the wounded, leaving the dead in the ruins. It was not victory. It was survival. But something important had happened. The Dominion had learned that humans would fight. Humans would die, yes. Humans would lose, probably. But humans would not surrender. In the command center, Marcus Webb received the report of the battle. More than 200 soldiers had died. They had killed fewer than 50 of the Dominion troops. By any measure of success, it was a failure. But Marcus did not see it that way. "Get me every military unit on the planet," Marcus said. "Send them the same message. We are still here. We are still fighting. We are still alive. And we will not stop." The message went out across the world. And in bunkers and tunnels and hidden bases everywhere, soldiers and civilians and ordinary people heard the message. They heard that they were not alone. They heard that the fight was not over. They heard that humans were going to keep going. The bombardment had destroyed Earth's cities. The first battles had killed thousands of soldiers. But the war had only just begun. And the Dominion was about to discover that destroying a planet was much easier than destroying the people who lived on it. In orbit, Commander Keel watched the reports come in. His tactical officers looked confused. The humans had lost. They had lost the cities. They had lost the first battles. Why did they not surrender? Keel did not understand. He had never encountered a species like this. A species that would keep fighting even when they were losing. A species that valued survival over surrender. But Keel was a military commander. He would adapt. He would change his strategy. If the humans wanted to keep fighting, then Keel would make sure they understood what fighting cost. He gave the order for the next phase of the invasion. The Dominion would go deeper. They would hunt the humans in their tunnels. They would find the bunkers. They would finish what they started. But what Keel did not know was that the humans were ready. For every plan the Dominion had, the humans had a counter-plan. For every strategy, the humans had an answer. And every day that passed was one more day that humanity got stronger. By the 7th day of the invasion, the Dominion had occupied all of Earth's major land areas. Dominion troops walked through the ruins of human cities. Dominion ships monitored the skies. Dominion soldiers set up bases in every country. By any reasonable measure, Earth had been conquered. But there was one problem. The Dominion could not find the humans. Beneath the surface of Earth, in tunnels and caves and bunkers that reached down hundreds of meters, millions of humans continued to live and work and fight. The Dominion had expected to find large populations hiding in obvious places. They had expected to discover bunkers that could be broken open and destroyed. What the Dominion had not expected was how prepared the humans had been. For decades, humans had built places to shelter from nuclear war. For decades, they had dug tunnels and created underground cities. These places had been built to survive the worst that humans could do to each other. Now, they were being used to survive the worst that the Dominion could do. Captain Marcus Webb moved through one of the largest underground facilities, a place beneath Denver that had been built to hold thousands of people. The facility had water and food. It had power generators that ran on solar panels hidden on the surface. It had medical centers and growing rooms where they cultivated fresh food. It had everything that humans needed to survive for a very long time. How many people do we have total in all the shelters? Marcus asked Patricia Brown as they walked through the halls filled with humans of all ages. 4 billion, Patricia said. That is half the population of Earth. The other half is in smaller facilities or spreading out across rural areas where they can hide. Marcus took this information in. 4 billion people alive in bunkers and tunnels. 4 billion people still alive when the Dominion expected them all to be dead or surrendered. This changed everything. The problem for the Dominion was that occupying a planet was not the same as controlling it. Yes, they controlled the surface. Yes, they controlled the sky. But the humans were not on the surface and not in the sky. The humans were everywhere else. On the 8th day, the Dominion attempted to find the underground shelters by using sensors and scanning equipment. They found some of the smaller ones. They found some of the old missile silos. But the largest and most important shelters remained hidden. The humans had learned to hide in ways that the Dominion's technology could not easily detect. Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell sat in her command center in Montana and watched the Dominion troops search the surface. The troops were looking for entrances to the underground bunkers. The soldiers were digging in likely places. The Dominion was using technology to scan the Earth. But the bunkers had been built by humans who knew how to hide things. The entrances were in places no one would think to look. They were hidden beneath destroyed buildings. They were disguised as natural caves. They were protected by layers of rock and metal and false walls. The humans had learned something important over thousands of years. They had learned how to run from things that wanted to kill them. They had learned how to hide when they had to. And now, all of that ancient knowledge was being put to use. In a facility beneath Russia, engineers worked on something secret. The Dominion did not know it existed. The facility had been built in the time of the old Soviet Union, a place designed to survive nuclear war. Now it was being used for something different. It was being used to build weapons. They were not big weapons. They were not weapons that could fight the Dominion in space. But they were weapons that could hurt them. An engineer named Colonel Vladimir Petrov led a team of the best minds in Russia. They took old satellite technology. They took old military systems. They took the resources they had available and they built something that might work. The same thing was happening in the United States. Scientists and engineers in bunkers across the country were working on weapons of their own. Dr. Lauren Hayes worked in a facility beneath the Grand Canyon. Lauren was a scientist who had dedicated her life to understanding space technology. Now she was using that knowledge to build something that might be able to strike back at the alien ships. This is not going to be easy, Lauren told the team working with her. The Dominion ships are protected by shields that our weapons cannot penetrate. But there are ways around this. There are weak points. There are ways to make them bleed. The humans could not win the war in space. They could not match the Dominion fleet, but they could hurt them. And sometimes, just the knowledge that you could hurt your enemy was enough to change how the enemy thought about the war. By the 10th day of the invasion, humans were beginning to strike back. Nothing big. Nothing that would win battles. But strikes, attacks, moments of revenge against the occupation. A group of soldiers under Major Robert Hayes struck at a Dominion supply depot. They killed 30 soldiers and destroyed supplies. The attack failed and Robert's team had to retreat, but they had struck the blow. In Japan, a team of volunteers took an old submarine and modified it with explosives. They waited for a Dominion landing craft to come down from space. When it did, they attacked. The landing craft was damaged. 3 of the volunteers died. But the message was sent. Humans could fight back. Captain Frank Hayes was running an operation in the ruins of Chicago. His mission was to collect people who were trapped on the surface and get them to the hidden bunkers. His team was small, just 10 pilots in old aircraft that should not have been able to fly anymore. But the pilots had fixed them up and armed them with improvised weapons. One day, a Dominion patrol spotted one of the aircraft. The patrol opened fire. Frank's pilot, a young woman named Elizabeth Tucker, tried to evade the fire. She was skilled, but she was not skilled enough. The aircraft took damage. Elizabeth managed to get it to a landing zone where she could set down safely. She and Frank and the other pilots got out and ran. Elizabeth stayed behind to set a charge that destroyed the aircraft so the Dominion could not study it. She did not make it out of the blast. Elizabeth Tucker died so that her fellow soldiers could live. And on the surface and in the bunkers below, soldiers heard about her sacrifice and felt something hard form in their hearts. Something that said they would keep going. Commander Keel received report after report of human attacks. The attacks were small. The attacks were not winning battles. But the attacks were happening everywhere. In every place his troops went, humans were there waiting. Humans were fighting. Humans were dying, but they kept coming. Keel looked at the data, and something began to change in his mind. This was not going to be simple. This was not going to be quick. The humans had lost the first battle, but they had not lost the war. A tactical officer approached Keel with new data. Commander, the humans appear to be building weapons in underground facilities. It will take them months, perhaps years, to make anything that can threaten us. But they are making the effort. Keel thought about this. Humans did not have the technology to really hurt the Dominion fleet. But they were trying. They were not accepting defeat. They were preparing to fight a war that they probably could not win. For the first time, Keel began to understand that he was facing something new. Not a civilization, but a species. A species that knew how to survive. A species that knew how to adapt. A species that would not quit. The invasion had succeeded militarily. The bombardment had destroyed the cities. The occupation had taken the surface. But the war was just beginning. And it was a war that the Dominion had never fought before. A war against an enemy that had nothing left to lose and everything to gain. On the 16th day of the invasion, Captain Marcus Webb called together all the military leaders who could reach the Denver Command Center safely. They came through tunnels and underground passages, the generals and colonels and major leaders of Earth's military forces. They came to discuss something that seemed impossible. They had no way to win. They had no weapons that could defeat the Dominion fleet. They were losing every battle they fought, but they were not giving up. "We have something the Dominion does not have," Marcus said to the gathered leaders. "We have a population that is willing to fight. We have a planet that is on our side. We have something called time. And we can use all of these things as weapons." A general from India named Rajesh Gupta spoke up. "The Dominion expects us to break. The Dominion expects us to surrender within weeks or months. They did not plan for a long war. They did not plan for an occupation that would drain resources." "Exactly," Marcus said. "We cannot beat them in space. We cannot match their weapons. But we can make them pay for every day they stay here. We can make them spend resources faster than they planned. We can make them realize that this conquest is not worth what it is costing them." Patricia Brown brought up a map on the screen. It showed the entire planet with red dots marking Dominion positions and blue dots marking human positions. "We have cells of resistance fighters everywhere. Every city, every region, every country. If we coordinate them, we can attack constantly. Nothing large enough to win battles, but constant attacks that never stop." The leaders looked at the map. They saw what Patricia meant. The Dominion controlled the major areas, but the humans controlled everything else. The spaces between, the tunnels beneath, the places where organized resistance could happen. Dr. James Foster, a physicist working on the weapons program, brought up another screen. "We have 3 prototype weapons that should be able to damage Dominion ships. Not destroy them, but damage them. The first one will be ready in 3 weeks. The room fell quiet. 3 weeks seemed like forever when alien ships were floating over your head. But 3 weeks was also nothing in a war. 3 weeks was just the beginning. What happens if we strike at them with these weapons? Asked General Maria Santos, the military leader of South America. Will they retaliate? They will, Marcus said. But not at random. They will retaliate where they think we are. And we will not be where they think we are. The beauty of this strategy is that it does not require us to win. It only requires us to survive and to keep striking. The meeting went on for 6 hours. By the end, every military leader in the room understood the plan. They would not try to win in the old way. They would not try to match the Dominion's power. Instead, they would wage a different kind of war. A war of attrition. A war that the Dominion had never fought before. The messages went out from the command center that night. Fighters in every bunker received new orders. Instead of staying hidden and staying quiet, they were told to prepare for constant attacks. Small attacks. Targeted attacks. Attacks that would disrupt the Dominion occupation and keep them under pressure. In Montana, Sarah Mitchell prepared her communications team for the work ahead. For weeks, her job had been to relay defense orders. Now her job would be to coordinate attacks. She would be the voice of human resistance on 1,000 different battlefields at the same time. The first coordinated attack came on the 18th day of the invasion. It was not a big attack. A group of soldiers attacked the Dominion water processing facility. They killed 15 Dominion soldiers. They destroyed supplies. Then they retreated back to their tunnels before the Dominion could send reinforcements. At almost the same time, another group attacked the Dominion communications tower in Africa. They did not destroy it, but they damaged it badly enough to interfere with Dominion communications for 2 hours. This gave other human fighters the chance to move without being detected. And in a bunker in the Grand Canyon, Dr. Lauren Hayes made a breakthrough. She and her team had finished the first working prototype of a kinetic strike weapon. It was crude. It was not elegant. But it would work. The weapon was simple by Dominion standards. It was a projectile moving at extremely high speed, launched from a hidden position using a modified military railgun system. The projectile did not have explosives. It did not have advanced technology. It was just a piece of metal moving very, very fast. Against a Dominion shield, it would not be able to penetrate. But there were moments when shields could fail. There were brief windows when a Dominion ship might be vulnerable. When can we use this? Asked the general overseeing the facility. Tomorrow night, Lauren said. There is a Dominion patrol ship that passes over Arizona every 18 hours. It follows the same route. Its shields are not operating at maximum capacity during the transit. If we time this right, we can hit it. The next day was spent preparing. The weapon was moved to a hidden location. The targeting system was calibrated. 30 soldiers were positioned to defend the launch site in case Dominion forces discovered their location. When the time came, the weapon was armed and ready. The Dominion patrol ship came over the horizon, right on schedule. For a moment, everything was quiet. Then the railgun fired. The projectile traveled faster than sound. It crossed the distance in seconds. The Dominion shields, not at full strength, did not stop it. The projectile hit the side of the patrol ship and tore through the hull. Sparks and air vented into space. The ship was not destroyed, but it was wounded. The Dominion ship tried to escape the area. It sent distress signals. It called for support. The humans at the launch site packed up their equipment and ran into the tunnels before the Dominion could arrive. What happened next was crucial. The Dominion sent 2 support ships to help the wounded patrol ship. Those 2 ships left their assigned patrol areas empty. Those empty patrol areas had been where human fighters wanted to operate. Now those fighters could work without being watched. More attacks followed. Every day brought new human operations. Some were small. Some were larger. Some succeeded. Some failed with soldiers dying for no gain. But the pattern was clear. The Dominion occupation was costing them. The Dominion ships were being damaged. The Dominion soldiers were being killed. Commander Keel sat in his command center watching the data flow in. The human resistance was growing. The attacks were increasing. The cost of holding Earth was rising faster than Keel had anticipated. His officers looked to him for guidance. They expected him to make a decision. They expected him to crush the resistance, or to ask for more ships, or to do something dramatic. But Keel saw something different when he looked at the data. He saw a war that was going to be long and painful. He saw a civilization that should have surrendered, choosing instead to fight. He saw resources being spent on suppression and occupation that the Dominion could not afford to waste. For the first time, Keel considered something that no Dominion commander had considered in 300 years. He considered retreat. But before he could make any decision, he received a message from Captain Marcus Webb. The message came on 22nd day of the invasion. It was not a surrender. It was not a plea for mercy. It was a broadcast that was sent to every Dominion ship in orbit around Earth. The broadcast came from Captain Marcus Webb. The message was simple, but it was the most important message that humans had sent since the invasion began. This is Captain Marcus Webb of Earth. I am speaking to Commander Keel and all Dominion forces. You have come to take our world. You have destroyed our cities. You have killed our people. But you have not broken us. We are still here. We will still be here when you leave. The Dominion is used to conquests that are quick and total. You expect populations to surrender when they see your power. But we will not. We have calculated what it will take to hold this planet. It will take a constant military presence for at least 2 years. It will take tens of thousands of your soldiers in constant combat against our resistance. It will take the use of your fleet that you could be using to conquer other worlds. We cannot defeat you in space. We cannot destroy your ships. But we can bleed you. We can wound you. We can make this conquest cost more than any other conquest in Dominion history. We can tie down your fleet and your soldiers in an endless war against an enemy that will not surrender. You have a choice. You can stay and fight this war knowing that it will drain you. Or you can leave. We offer you this choice because we are willing to die. Are you willing to pay the price? The message ended there, but it carried something powerful. It carried the truth of what the humans were saying. The Dominion could take Earth, but taking Earth would cost more than the Dominion wanted to pay. Commander Keel watched the message. He watched it again. He had his tactical officers run calculations. He had his strategists analyze the human claims. Every single one of them came back with the same answer. The humans were right. If the Dominion stayed and continued the occupation, they would need to commit resources that they could not afford to commit. They would need to tie down their fleet in combat against a civilization that had learned to hide and survive, and fight without winning. It was a war that the Dominion could eventually win, but the winning would cost them more than they wanted to pay. In 300 years of conquest, the Dominion had never encountered anything like this. They had never encountered a civilization that would fight even when defeat was certain. They had never encountered a species that understood that survival was more important than victory. Keel made his decision. It was the hardest decision he had ever made, but it was the right decision. He sent an order to every ship in the Dominion fleet. The order was to disengage. The order was to leave orbit. The order was to depart from Earth and return to Dominion space. The Dominion was not surrendering. They were not being defeated, but they were choosing to leave. And in the calculation of military strategy and resource management, leaving was the right choice. On Earth, in the command center beneath Denver, Captain Marcus Webb received the signal from space. The Dominion ships were powering down their occupation systems. The Dominion ships were breaking orbit. The Dominion ships were leaving. "Get me a satellite view," Marcus said. "I want to see them go with my own eyes." The screens filled with images of space. The massive Dominion fleet that had seemed so unstoppable just weeks ago began to move. Ship by ship, they rose higher into orbit. Ship by ship, they engaged their engines and began to accelerate away from Earth. Patricia Brown stood next to Marcus and watched the screens. She did not speak. What was there to say? They had been told to surrender or die. They had chosen to fight, and they had survived. Around the world, in bunkers and tunnels and hidden facilities, humans received the message. The invasion was over. The Dominion was leaving. Earth was free. The celebrations began slowly. In the first hours, people did not believe it. They thought it was a trick. They thought the Dominion would return. But as the hours passed, and the hours became days, the truth sank in. Humans had survived. Humans had refused to be conquered. Humans had won, but winning had a cost. When humans began to emerge from the bunkers and tunnels, they saw a world that was devastated. The cities were destroyed. Millions of people were dead. The surface of the planet was scarred with weapon strikes and craters from bombardment. It would take decades to rebuild. It would take years to process what had happened. Captain Frank Hayes emerged from his bunker in Chicago and walked through the ruins of the city he had called home. Buildings that had stood for 100 years were gone. Streets he had driven on every day were rubble. People he had known were dead. The victory felt empty in the face of so much loss. But Frank also knew that if humans had surrendered, if they had accepted Dominion rule, then all of this loss would have been for nothing. Instead, the loss meant something. The loss meant that humans were still free. In Colorado, Marcus Webb held a broadcast from the command center. He spoke to the scattered and damaged population of Earth. He spoke to the survivors and the grieving. He spoke to the world that had fought and survived. "We have lost much," Marcus said. "We have lost our cities. We have lost our people. We have lost the world we knew. But we kept something more important. We kept our freedom. We kept our right to choose our own future. And we did this by refusing to accept that we should lose. The Dominion came expecting us to fold. The Dominion came expecting us to accept their rule. But humans are made of different material. We are made from millions of years of survival on a hard world. We are made from the determination to keep going even when the odds are against us. And we proved that today. Now we must rebuild. Now we must take this damaged world and make it whole again. This will be harder than the fighting. This will take longer. But we will do it because we survived the invasion. And if we can survive that, we can survive anything." The rebuilding began immediately. Humans emerged from their hiding places and began the work of creating a new world from the ashes of the old one. Food that had been rationed in bunkers was now used to feed workers in the ruins. Engineers and scientists began planning how to rebuild infrastructure. Soldiers began clearing roads and moving debris. Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell left her command post and went to the surface for the first time since the invasion began. She walked through the ruins of Denver. She saw the scale of the destruction. She understood that millions would die in the rebuilding process from disease and hunger and exposure. But she also understood that they were alive. They were free, and that meant they had won. Weeks after the Dominion departure, a message came from the Dominion fleet. It was encrypted and sent on a hidden frequency. It came from Commander Keel. It came directly to Captain Marcus Webb. The message said only one thing: "Your species shows more honor and survival than most show in victory. We have informed the other civilizations of the galaxy that Earth is a world of warriors and survivors. Do not expect to be attacked again. The Dominion does not return to places where our enemies refuse to break." Marcus did not share the message with anyone. It was a private communication, a moment of understanding between two military leaders on opposite sides of a war that should have destroyed one of them. Earth began a new age that day. The cities would be rebuilt. The population would grow. The scars would heal, though some would never fully disappear. But humans would never forget the lesson of the invasion. Humans would never forget that when the choice came to surrender or to survive, humanity had chosen survival. And in choosing to survive, humans had won something greater than victory. They had won the respect of the galaxy. And they had learned something about themselves. They had learned that they could face impossible odds and refuse to break. They had learned that they could lose everything and still win by choosing to keep going. The Dominion had sent the greatest fleet to conquer Earth, but the Dominion had not understood one simple thing. Humans did not surrender because survival mattered more than pride. And when survival was all that mattered, humans could endure anything.